I shot the EOS-1, and all I can really say is that it's a film camera and it takes pictures, but you know a lot more than me. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions because you're a lot more knowledgeable. So the autofocus on this camera, what did you think of the autofocus?
Well, so the autofocus is pretty rudimentary. It only has the single autofocus point. It's also probably worth mentioning that the EOS-1 was one of the very first film cameras for the EOS system that was actually aimed and geared at professional photographers. When it came out in like the late 80s, and there was a bunch of them made through the 90s, it was the go-to camera for lots of pros. And yeah, like you're saying, the autofocus system was probably, I mean, at the time it was great, but now one autofocus point is kind of it's kind of hilarious. So you would always have to focus and recompose this camera. But I mean, compared to a lot of other film cameras that I've owned that don't even have autofocus, like this works pretty well, actually.
And you've shot more Canon film cameras than I have. So the EOS-3, EOS-N, you had the N, right, for a little bit?
Yeah, the N.
Do you think that the
AE1, the F1, all sorts of them. Lots of them.
Yeah. So the Canon N versus the 1 N versus the 1.
So
is it worth it?
Well, I mean, they're probably pretty comparable in price on eBay. The difference might be $10-20. So I don't know. It just kind of depends on your style and stuff, and like what you want to do with autofocus. But the real big difference between the EOS-1 and the EOS-1N was that the autofocus on the original one only has one focus point, and the EOS-N has 5 focus points. So like you were able just to basically move from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 just across the middle of the line, which was a little bit more helpful for composition and stuff. But I still find even when I was using that camera, I was still just focusing on that one point in the middle and then recomposing and just getting my shot quick. And that would work a lot. Like most of my shots were in focus.
Yeah, so if you want to save a little bit of money and you're okay focusing and recomposing, then the 1 is probably good.
Yeah.
What about the ISO performance?
There's no ISO performance on this bad boy as it's film. You got to put film in it. It does have an auto winder in it, which is handy. It does require batteries, and it's a proprietary battery. Although you can pick up, I have a set for mine that are rechargeable that I got on, maybe I got them at B&H or Amazon, but you can search out rechargeable ones. So if you shoot this camera a lot, at least you don't have to pay for the batteries over and over again, but you will have to pay for film.
Yeah. How's the dynamic range? Does it hold up to modern Sony sensors?
Again, it's totally indicative of the film you choose as film cameras.
But yeah, I mean, basically when it comes down to film cameras, it's all down to like autofocus and usability. If you're comfortable with like a Canon DSLR, like I know I went over to the EOS-1 without even like thinking about it.
You know, and the other reason that I actually bought that camera and I got that camera anyway is because I'd already had a lot of practice with a lot of other film cameras I like, but I had a large collection of modern EF glass that I could just stick on that thing. So I could go out with my 85-1.2L and make pictures that were comparable to what I was making on a DSLR, but just, you know, bring the film aspect to it. Yeah,
I'd say that the EOS-1 is a great semi-cheap option for anybody who just has some EF glass and they want to adapt it and they just want to try out film. That's how it was for me. And you know, there's not too much to think about. If you are used to the DSLRs, like I was saying, you can just pretty much go to the EOS-1 and start shooting. The film auto loads, and yeah, everything's kind of mostly automatic from what I remember.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy camera to use as far as film cameras go. So this here is a friend of mine who also happens to be a Sony recording artist. She needed some pictures for an album she was doing, so out we went. She wanted something that was kind of vintagey and had kind of an old world feel, so I took my film camera on this one. This shot I actually did with the Canon 135 f2. As you can see, there's just a ton of bokeh on this lens, but like there's still a good amount of sharpness, and like the colors are still looking pretty good. I mean, you might even believe that this was shot on a digital camera. I definitely spent a lot of time in Photoshop cleaning up grain and cleaning up like dust spots and stuff like that. But all in all, it still looks pretty modern. This is another picture I did on the same shoot. I wanted to try to see how much sky I could keep in the photo in a really bright background for this particular shot, and it still held pretty well. I did have to do a little bit in post to kind of bring the sky back a little bit, but yeah, as you can see, like even from a good distance away, I was probably shooting this on a 50. I was able to get autofocus pretty good. I mean, she's pretty sharp for a film photo. And here is another one that I did with the 135, and I just wanted to kind of have her looking off into the city. I just kind of wanted it to be kind of a whimsy but still interesting kind of shot to look at. So when you see it, you just kind of wonder what's she looking at. And as you can tell, the bokeh is really creamy and nice, and the colors still look pretty modern.
Oh, there's one more.
One more that I did. Same shoot there, and for this one, you can see I got a big lens flare coming out of the. I believe this one was actually shot with the 35 Mark I, and I did a lot of cleanup in post to get rid of the grain and clean up around the base and stuff. But the bokeh still looks really nice, and it's a little jittery around the trees. But in the back on this corner here, it looks really nice, and I really like the way that lens flares, and it looked really good. And it's a lot of times it's hard to get flares like this with film, so I was pretty happy with that shot.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing to talk about here is that none of these are actually center composed. So the focus and recompose method works pretty good. You just got to be a little bit careful. So these are obviously all on the EOS-1 with one autofocus point in the middle. And so going through, everything is always pretty in focus. I remember my keeper rate from this camera was good. And yeah, nothing is center weighted or anything. So yeah, obviously the autofocus does pretty well, and there's not too much else to say other than it's a film camera and the film looks good through it. And yeah, the lenses that I adapted this is the 85 millimeter. This is the 85 millimeter. These are actually all the 85 millimeter 1.2. So yeah, if you just already have the Canon glass and you want to adapt some lenses onto a film camera, then this is a great cheap option.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Like if you already have a few lenses, just go pick up one of these cameras on eBay for almost nothing and go shoot some film.
Yeah, if you're looking into Canon EF mount film cameras, you might be looking at the EOS-1V. That's kind of the gold standard, but it is like 3 to 5 times more expensive than this camera.
Or you could also look at the EOS-3. I had that one, and that camera had really good autofocus that was more akin to like the 5D Mark III.
Yeah, and then it kind of had that future tech in it where it would follow your people.
Yeah, it could follow your eye
Did that actually work? Or?
You know, it did work, actually. It did actually work. It was kind of creepy. Yeah. It doesn't have anything like that on this camera, though. You're talking very rudimentary autofocus. But you can get it done. Like you can see from our photos, everything was still really sharp.
Yeah, cheap, good, and center-weighted autofocus point.